Let me tell you something, honey. I was lying on my living room floor that night, cold wood under my cheek, blood on my hands, and pain I can still feel when I think about it. And standing right over me was my own son, looking down like I didn't matter anymore. He leaned in and said, "No one will help you." His wife stood right behind him, silent like she agreed. I remember reaching for my phone, slowly, barely able to move. That's when he laughed and said, "Go ahead." But what he didn't understand was that I wasn't calling for mercy. I was dialing one number, and that one call was about to change everything. Before we go further, honey, tell me something real quick. Where are you listening from right now? And if this story is touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. More real stories are coming, and you won't want to miss them. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 64 years old, and if there's one thing life taught me, it's this. People don't always come into your home to love you. Sometimes they come to take it. That night started with pain. Not emotional pain. I mean real pain, sharp, burning, like my ribs had been snapped in half and left to argue with my breath. The first thing I remember was the floor. Cold hardwood. My cheek pressed against it, and something warm spreading underneath me. Blood. I remember blinking slowly, thinking how ridiculous it was that a house you built with your own hands could feel so unfamiliar when you're lying broken on it. I built this house in Georgia back in 2003 when my husband was still alive. Back when my hands weren't shaking. Back when my biggest worry was whether the paint would dry before the rain came. My husband, Robert Carter, used to say, "Evelyn, you measure twice because you care twice as much." I used to laugh at him. Now I realize that man was teaching me how to survive people like my own family. Because tonight, my own blood wasn't just on the floor. It was standing over me. My daughter-in-law, Melissa, leaned against the wall like she owned the air in the room. Arms crossed. Not scared. Not shocked. Just irritated. Like I was a delay in her schedule. And my son, my boy, Jason Carter, 36 years old, stood right in front of me. Calm. Too calm. That kind of calm that doesn't belong to someone who cares. That belongs to someone who already decided the ending. "Mom," he said softly, like he was talking me down from a silly misunderstanding. "You should have just signed the papers." Papers. That word hit me harder than the fall. Because I already knew what they were. My house. My savings. Everything Robert and I worked for over 40 years of double shifts, broken backs, and skipped vacations. Melissa even called it family planning. I almost laughed through the pain. Family planning? Honey, this ain't planning. This is theft wearing perfume. I tried pushing myself up. Bad idea. Pain shot through my side like lightning. I collapsed back down, gasping. Jason didn't move. Didn't help. Didn't even flinch. Just sighed like I was being difficult. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. Melissa finally spoke, voice sweet as poison. "We gave you a chance, Evelyn. We really did. A chance. Oh, I've heard that word before. That's what people say right before they take everything from you and call it progress." My eyes drifted across the room. Overturned chair. My reading glasses crushed near the table leg. And the documents. Neatly placed. Highlighted. Waiting like a trap dressed as paperwork. And then I saw it. My phone. 3 feet away. Maybe less. Jason noticed me looking at it. And he laughed. Not loud. Just a small, confident laugh. "Go ahead," he said. "Call someone. See who picks up." That's when I understood something very clearly. He didn't think I had anyone. He thought I was alone. Old. Weak. Finished. "But Jason, baby, you forgot who raised you." I dragged myself forward. Every inch felt like dragging glass through my bones. My fingers finally touched the phone. Melissa sighed. "Jason, she's really doing this dramatic thing again." Dramatic. That's what they call it when a woman refuses to disappear quietly. Jason didn't stop me. Because he didn't care. Because he believed no one would come. But here's what they didn't know. Silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes it means you're dialing the right number. My thumb hovered. Jason leaned closer. Who you gonna call, Mom? Pastor? Neighbors? They asleep. Nobody's coming. I looked up at him. Really looked. At the boy I once stayed up with during chickenpox nights. At the teenager I defended when teachers said he was trouble. At the man who now looked at me like I was disposable. And I pressed one number. Not 911. Not police. Something else. Something they never saw coming. The moment the call connected, everything changed. Jason stopped smiling. Just slightly. But I saw it. That tiny crack in confidence. 'Cause now, I wasn't just a woman on the floor anymore. I was a phone call away from the truth. I stayed on that floor longer than I should have. Not because I couldn't move, but because sometimes your body needs a moment to accept what your heart already knows. My son wasn't my son in that room. Not anymore. Jason stood there, watching me like I was a problem that had finally reached its expiration date. And Melissa? She had that same look you see in people waiting for an elevator, impatient, like my pain was just taking too long. I let out a slow breath. Not fear. Not surrender. Just understanding. Because once you see people clearly, there's no unseeing them. Let me tell you something, honey. Betrayal doesn't start with shouting. It starts with kindness that feels slightly off. About 8 months before that night, Jason started visiting more often. First I thought finally, my boy's coming back around. He'd show up with coffee, sit at my kitchen table, talk about life stuff. But there was something different in his eyes. Like he wasn't visiting me. He was inspecting me. One evening, he leaned back in his chair and said real casual, "Mom, have you ever thought about downsizing?" I remember laughing. Downsizing what? My life or my house? He smiled but didn't really laugh. That was the first crack. Melissa joined later. And she didn't waste time pretending. She walked into my kitchen one afternoon, heels clicking like she owned the place already. She looked around and said, "This house is sitting on way too much value to just sit here." I blinked. "Excuse me? Sit here?" "Honey, this sit here was built with my spine and my sweat." I said nothing at the time. Just watched. Because I learned something after Robert passed. People reveal themselves faster when you stay quiet. After that, Jason changed his tone. Not rude. Not aggressive. Worse. Practical. That fake, "I'm trying to help you" voice. "Mom, we're just thinking ahead," he said one night. "What if something happens? You fall? You get sick? Something." That word again. So empty, yet always dangerous. Then came the paperwork phase. Oh yes, the paperwork phase. Power of attorney. "Just in case," he said. "Just in case I became inconvenient. Just in case I started thinking for myself less. Just in case I stopped being useful." I looked at those papers sitting on my table. Neat. Organized. Highlighted like I was supposed to be impressed. Melissa tapped the folder. "This is just smart planning, Evelyn. Don't make it emotional. Don't make it emotional." That line right there? That's how people steal from you without feeling guilty. By calling your heart a problem. I didn't sign. I didn't argue either. I just said, "No." And that's when everything changed. Jason didn't yell. He didn't need to. He just stopped pretending. Visits got shorter. Tone got colder. Smiles disappeared. Melissa stopped sitting like she owned the place and started standing like she was ready to take it. And Jason, he started studying me like a balance sheet. How much is still in the retirement account? Did you update the will after Dad passed? Who has access to the house deed? Questions. Always questions. Not love. Not concern. Inventory. That's when I knew. They weren't planning for my future. They were planning for my absence. So I did something they never expected. I got quiet. Not weak quiet. Strategic quiet. I started locking things down. Accounts. Documents. Everything Robert and I built over decades. I called a man I hadn't spoken to in years. Attorney David Reynolds. Old school. Sharp. The kind of man who doesn't waste words or patience. I said, David, I think my family is preparing to bury me before I'm dead. He didn't even hesitate. Then we prepare first. That's when things started shifting. Not visibly. Not yet. But underneath. Like a storm forming where nobody's looking. Jason was still in front of me. Waiting. Confident. Like the story was already written in his favor. Melissa crossed her arms. You're overreacting, Evelyn. Nobody's trying to hurt you. I almost laughed. Nobody's trying? Baby. I'm on the floor bleeding in my own house. If this ain't trying, what is? Jason took a step closer. Lowered his voice. You don't have to make this ugly. That's when I realized something cold. In his mind, I was the problem for resisting, not them for taking. I slowly lifted my phone again, my fingers shaking but not from fear, from something sharper. Decision. Jason smirked. Still calling people? I looked up at him, and I said something I will never forget. I'm not calling people who will save me, Jason. Pause. I'm calling people who will end this. That was the first time his face changed. Just a little. But enough. Because confidence always cracks when it realizes it might not be the smartest person in the room anymore. And right then, the call I made earlier, it wasn't random. It wasn't desperate. It was deliberate. Jason kept staring at my phone like it meant nothing. Like it was already over. You really think someone's coming? He said, shaking his head. Nobody's picking up at this hour, Mom. I didn't answer right away. Because he was half right. The call wasn't picked up. Not in the way he expected. There was no long conversation. No crying. No begging. Just one thing. Connection. A soft click. And then, silence. Jason let out a short laugh. Told you. Melissa rolled her eyes. This is just getting sad now. But what they didn't understand was that silence wasn't empty. That number I dialed? It wasn't just a person. It was something I had arranged weeks ago. A direct line tied to my attorney's office. Protected contact. A system. If I called and said nothing, if the line stayed open, if there was stress in the background, raised voices struggle, it triggered a response. No explanation needed. No second call required. Just action. I lowered the phone slowly. Jason tilted his head. That's it. Now I smiled. Not big. Not dramatic. Just enough. That's more than enough. Melissa frowned. What does that even mean? I shifted slightly, pain pulling at my ribs, but my voice stayed steady. It means I don't need to convince anyone anymore. Pause. It means everything that needed to be heard. I lifted the phone just slightly. Already was. That's when it happened. Not panic. Not fear. Just a flicker. A small quiet crack in Jason's confidence. Because for the first time that night, he didn't fully understand what was happening. Who did you call? He asked again. This time, his voice wasn't steady. I held his eyes and said softly, You'll see. And somewhere, across town, a phone that wasn't supposed to stay active was still connected, still listening, still recording, and a man who doesn't ignore silence had already stood up, already grabbed his keys, already made the call that mattered. That was the moment everything started moving. Jason just didn't know it yet. I still remember the sound of that door. Not the knock. Not the hesitation. The hard final opening, like whoever was coming in didn't ask permission from fear, time, or anyone sitting in my living room. Jason turned first. That confident mask he'd been wearing started to slip. Melissa straightened up immediately, like her body suddenly remembered manners. And me? I didn't move, because I already knew who it was. Evening, a calm voice said. And just like that, the room changed temperature. A tall man stepped inside. Mid-50s. Dark suit slightly unbuttoned like he had rushed here without caring how he looked. Sharp eyes. Controlled breathing. The kind of man who doesn't waste energy proving power, because he already has it. Attorney David Reynolds. Jason blinked. Who are you? David didn't even look at him first. His eyes went straight to me. Me on the couch. Bruised. Bloody. Still sitting in my own house like a stranger in it. Mrs. Carter, he said gently, ignoring everything else. Are you able to speak? I nodded once. That's all I needed to do. 'Cause what came next was not about emotion anymore. It was about structure. David turned slightly toward Jason and Melissa. Not aggressive. Not loud. Worse. Certain. I'm going to make this very simple, he said. Jason frowned. Excuse me? You can't just walk in here. David raised one hand. Not to stop him. To erase him. I can, he said calmly. Because I was called here before you decided to turn this house into a negotiation room. Silence. Heavy silence. Melissa scoffed nervously. This is a family matter. David finally looked at her and smiled just a little. That's where you're wrong. He reached into his folder and placed it on the coffee table. Slow. Deliberate. Like every page inside it had weight. Jason leaned forward. What is this supposed to be? David answered without blinking. Legal protection. He opened the folder. And I saw it. All of it. My signatures. Updated trust documents. Asset restructuring. Medical directives. Emergency legal authority. Everything I had spent months quietly preparing. Jason laughed, but it didn't sound real. This is ridiculous. Mom doesn't even understand half this stuff. That sentence. That right there. That was the moment his fate started shifting. Because David finally looked at him directly. Not angry. Not emotional. Just factual. Mr. Carter, he said. Your mother signed every document voluntarily. She also documented every conversation that raised concern over the past several months. Melissa froze. Documented. David nodded. Yes. Audio logs. Written summaries. Financial tracking. Communication records. Jason's face tightened. That's insane. David tilted his head slightly. No, he said quietly. That's prepared. Something changed in Jason's breathing. I could see it now. Not panic yet, but instability. The kind that shows up when someone realizes the ground they were standing on was never solid. Melissa stepped forward. This is manipulation. She's being influenced. David interrupted her instantly. No. One word. Flat. Final. She contacted my office 6 months ago. Before any of this confrontation ever occurred. That landed heavy. 6 months. Jason blinked. 6 months. David nodded again. Yes. Pause. Then he added. And before you ask, no, she did not anticipate violence. She anticipated behavioral escalation. That word. Escalation. Jason looked at me then. For the first time that night. Not as an obstacle, but as something he didn't fully understand anymore. David continued. Tonight's incident has already been reported based on pre-authorized instruction. Jason stepped back slightly. Reported to who? David answered simply. Authorities. Melissa went pale. Jason shook his head. No, you don't understand, she fell. She. I finally spoke. My voice was rough, but steady. I didn't fall. That was it. No drama. No shouting. Just truth sitting in the room like a brick. Jason looked at me like he wanted me to take it back. Like I had broken the version of reality he depended on. Outside, I heard it. Distant at first. Then closer. Engines. Multiple. Jason heard it too. His head snapped toward the window. What is that? David didn't turn. He already knew. Support arrival, he said. Melissa whispered. Support. And then, headlights. Bright. Flooding through the curtains. One vehicle. Then another. Then another. Jason took a step toward the window. No, 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 no. And then came the sound that ended everything he was holding on to. Doors. Slamming. Heavy footsteps. Jason turned back to David. His voice wasn't confident anymore. What did you do? David finally closed the folder and said the sentence that cracked the entire room open. I responded to what your mother prepared for months ago. Pause. Then softer. You didn't walk into a trap tonight. Another pause. You walked into a conclusion. Melissa shook her head. This is crazy, she's just an old woman. I stood up. Slowly. Painfully. But I stood. And that's when Melissa stopped talking. Because I wasn't just a problem anymore. I was someone still standing after everything they thought would break me. Jason's confidence didn't just fade. It started collapsing. Because the truth was no longer something he could argue with. It was arriving in uniforms, paperwork, and consequences. You ever notice something, honey? The moment truth walks into a room, lies don't fight. They scatter. The door didn't just open. It hit the stopper like it meant it. Hard. Final. The kind of sound that doesn't ask questions, it answers them. Jason froze. Not moved. Not stepped back. Just froze. Like his body hadn't caught up to what his instincts already knew. Melissa turned toward the hallway, her voice tightening. What is going on? And then they came in. Uniforms. More than one. Boots on hardwood. Measured steps. Not rushed. Not confused. Just certain. That's the thing about real authority. It doesn't panic. It arrives already knowing something is wrong. Two officers stepped forward first. One scanned the floor. The blood. The overturned chair. The documents on the table. Then me. Then Jason. Then Melissa. You could almost see the story forming behind his eyes. Piece by piece. No one had to explain anything yet. The room was already talking. Ma'am, one officer said, his voice steady, respectful. Are you injured? I nodded slowly. My ribs. And I hit my head. Jason stepped in quickly. No, she fell. It was an accident, she. The officer raised a hand. Not aggressively. But enough. Sir. I'll get your statement. Pause. After I assessed the situation. That's when Jason stepped back. Because control had just left his hands. Melissa tried to recover. People like her always do. She smoothed her hair, straightened her posture. Put that fake calm back on like a jacket. This is being blown out of proportion, she said. She's confused. She's been emotional lately. Stop. David's voice. Sharp this time. Not loud. But it cut straight through her. She is neither confused nor emotional, he said. She is documented, protected, and fully aware of what's happening. That word again. Documented. I saw Melissa's fingers twitch. Because she remembered. Every conversation. Every push. Every moment she thought no one was keeping track. David stepped forward. Opened his folder again. But this time, he didn't just show it. He used it. Officer, he said. My client initiated legal protection protocols months ago due to escalating coercion attempts regarding property and financial control. The officer nodded slightly. Go on. David placed a small device on the table. A phone. Not mine. Recorded conversations, he said calmly. Jason's head snapped toward it. What? David didn't look at him. Dates, timestamps, and transcripts available. Melissa whispered. No, that's not. David pressed play. And suddenly, the room filled with their own voices. Melissa's voice. This house is wasted on you, Evelyn. We could actually use it. Jason's voice. Mom, you're not thinking clearly anymore. Let me handle things. Another one. Sharper. Colder. If you don't sign now, it's just going to get harder for you later. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Jason's breathing changed. You could hear it. Short. Uneven. Because there's something about hearing your own words. Outside your control. That strips everything away. This doesn't prove anything, Jason said quickly. Too quickly. It's just conversations. You're twisting. The officer looked at him. Not angry. Not emotional. Just done listening. Sir, he said, we also have a physical scene here. He gestured lightly. The injury. The disturbance. The context. Jason shook his head. No, I didn't hit her. I didn't. I spoke again. Calm. Clear. You shoved me. That was it. No drama. No yelling. Just truth. And this time, there were witnesses. Melissa grabbed Jason's arm. Hard. Say something, she hissed. But there was nothing left to say. That's the thing nobody tells you. Manipulation needs space. It needs confusion. It needs doubt. The moment facts line up, it dies. Right there. In front of everyone. One of the officers stepped aside. Spoke quietly into his radio. Short phrases. Clear. Professional. Then he came back. Looked directly at Jason. Sir, I need you to turn around. Jason blinked. What? You are being detained pending investigation of assault. That word. Assault. It landed like a hammer. Melissa stepped back immediately. Like distance could save her now. Jason looked at me. Not angry. Not confident. Just lost. Mom, you're really doing this? And for the first time that night, I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just clarity. You did this, I said quietly. They didn't rush him. Didn't shove him. Didn't need to. Authority doesn't chase. It waits for reality to catch up. Jason turned slowly, hands behind his back. The click of the cuffs was louder than anything else that night. Because that sound, that was the end of his version of the story. Melissa tried one last time. This is insane. He didn't mean this isn't. The officer looked at her. Ma'am, you can step outside if you'd like to give a statement. Translation. You're not in control anymore either. She didn't move. Because for the first time, she didn't know what move to make. The house felt different. Not quiet. Not yet. But lighter. Like something heavy had finally been dragged out of it. David walked over to me. Lowered his voice. It's over, he said. I shook my head slightly. No, I whispered. It's just clear now. You'd think the loudest part of a night like that would be the shouting, the accusations, the sound of handcuffs. But you'd be wrong. The loudest part is what comes after. The house was quiet again. Not the same quiet as before. Not that tense walking on glass kind of silence. This one was different. Settled. Honest. Like the walls had finally exhaled. A week passed. Then two. Bruises fade slower than people think. Not just on the body, but in the places nobody sees. I moved through the house carefully. Not because I was afraid, but because I was aware. Every step had weight now. Every room had memory. One morning I found myself standing in the kitchen. Same spot I'd stood in 1,000 times before. Coffee in my hand. Sunlight coming through the window just right. Clean. Simple. Real. And for the first time in months, there was no pressure in the air. No careful conversations. No hidden intentions. Just peace. But peace doesn't come without echoes. And mine came through a phone call. It rang around 9:17 in the morning. I didn't even need to look at the screen. A mother knows. Even after everything. A mother knows. I let it ring. It stopped. Then started again. Different number this time. Facility line. I stared at it. Thumb hovering. Heart quiet. That's the part people don't understand. They expect rage. Or heartbreak. Or some big emotional storm. But what I felt was clarity. I answered. Not because I owed him anything. But because I needed to hear what was left of him. Mom. His voice. Smaller. Not weak. But stripped. Like someone had taken away all the confidence he used to wear. I didn't say anything at first. Let him sit in that silence. Let him feel what it's like when someone else controls the moment. I didn't mean for it to go like that, he said quickly. There it was. Not I'm sorry. Not I hurt you. Just, I didn't mean for it to happen that way. I closed my eyes for a second. Not in pain. In understanding. Jason, I said quietly, you didn't trip and fall into that night. Silence. You walked into it. He exhaled sharply. Melissa said. I stopped him right there. No. One word. Firm. Final. Don't hand your choices to someone else now. You were standing there. You made them. That hit him. I could hear it. Because accountability? That's heavier than guilt. I was just trying to fix things, he said. Fix. That word again. Always dressed up to look harmless. You weren't fixing anything, I replied. You were trying to take control of something that wasn't yours. There was a long pause. Then finally, are you going to help me? There it was. Not regret. Need. And that question. That's where most parents break. That's where years of love come rushing back in. That's where people forget everything that happened, because blood feels heavier than truth. I walked over to the window, looked out at the yard. The same yard where he used to run as a boy, where he scraped his knees, where I held him and told him everything would be okay. And I said something I never thought I'd say. No. Silence. Deep. Uncomfortable. Real. I gave you help your whole life, I continued. Time. Money. Chances. More chances than you deserved. Pause. But help doesn't mean I disappear so you can stand. His breathing got uneven. Mom. I'm your son. And there it was. The last card. The one people think always wins. I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me. You are, I said. And I was your mother. Pause. But somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as a person. Another silence. Longer this time. He didn't have a response. Because there isn't one for truth like that. I'm not doing this out of anger, I said softly. I'm doing it because I finally understand something I should have learned a long time ago. What? He asked quietly. I took a breath. Steady. Clear. Love doesn't mean access. Pause. Family doesn't mean ownership. And then, I hung up. I stood there for a while after that. Phone still in my hand. Heart steady. Not broken. Not heavy. Just done. People think strength looks loud. Like shouting. Like revenge. Like making a scene. But real strength? It's quiet. It's walking away from something you spent your whole life holding on to. Because you finally understand it's no longer holding you back. It's holding you down. I went back to the living room later that day. Ran my hand across the hardwood floor. Same floor. Same house. Same life. But different truth. That house was never just wood and nails. It was years. Sacrifices. Decisions. And now? It was something else too. Proof. That even when everything breaks, you can still stand. So if you're listening to me right now, let me tell you something straight. Don't wait until you're on the floor. to realize who's standing over you. Don't confuse silence with love. Don't confuse pressure with care. And don't, ever, hand over your life just to keep the peace. Because peace built on surrender ain't peace. It's just quiet control. And one more thing, honey. Being family doesn't give someone the right to take from you. It gives them the responsibility to protect you. And if they don't, then you protect yourself, no matter who they are. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more emotional stories like this.